It's a very somber topic.
Yep.
I just realized it's a book. It's talking about killing characters, and I'm wearing a shirt called "Killing It." That was not intentional.
I love it though. The irony.
The irony. I'm killing it. What is up, my fellow writing addicts? I'm Marissa, and today we're talking about killing off characters because, for me at least, killing off a character is so important to be done right, because when it's done wrong, it's just almost painful to witness. I mean, we all can think of a painful death that just was so unsatisfying, because what the fuck?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
So you always have to ask yourself is, when should I kill off a character? And that's where I'm here to help you today. So the first off is obviously to advance the plot. This makes a lot of sense that if the next thing to happen, a character needs to die. It sets off the story, whether it be like revenge plot, justice plot, give the characters more motivation. Basically every kind of killing thing every death should advance the plot, let's be real. So that's the easiest one to get through. So another reason to kill off your character is that it fulfills their personal goal. We like to call them doomed characters. It's just to get what they want, they have to die. The best thing I always think of is typically in time of revenge. For those of you who've seen season 8 of Game of Thrones, if you haven't, I'm sorry, spoilers. When the Hound takes on his older brother to win and, get his revenge, he has to die. It was what's going to happen. It wasn't really a shock. Another time to kill off a character is when you want to emphasize the theme of the novel. This has to be done very carefully to make sure that what is the message that's being sent out isn't hindered by this death, but is instead more like emboldened by this death. You'd hate to essentially kind of retract what you're saying or distract from what you're saying by this death. So this one, it can be really useful for like theme, especially like a theme of loss. But just be careful about how you go about it and how the characters react to it, because that'll really sell what kind of message you want to send. Another thing that you could do is if the characters just reached the end of their arc and it's time for them to go. I see this a lot, especially Game of Thrones, where they hit the end of their arc, it's time for them to leave, and typically they leave through death, and most of the time, most people are okay with that. I know I'm okay with it. I really don't like it if a character just leaves at the end of their arc, like, well guys, I've done it. I've successfully become a better person. Bye. And it's not like the end of the book. Like, it's still got more time to go. I'm like, yeah, you could axe them off. It's cool. So the last two that I have for you can't be sustainable by themselves. You have to take, even if you put them together, as 2 points, you really should still add another one from this list, just because it'll make it a lot stronger. I really don't see books that are able to stand on their own with these two things. And the first point is that it motivates other characters. We see this a lot in films and books. Is one character dies and it's like, we can't let them die in vain. And they're like, yeah, let's go, and it's fine. And they march on, but at the end of the day, they still could have been motivated by that character being hurt or another anything else, so it doesn't really stick if it's just a death, because it almost feels like they die for nothing. So the second one is that it creates realism in your world. And the reason this doesn't work is that, while yes, people die every day in every world, it won't matter if random people die just for the sake of dying if your main characters are still safe and protected. I see this a lot in young adult where you feel you have 5 or 6 kids and they're all safe at the end of it, even though they're putting themselves in the dumbest danger. And it's like, how are you still alive? Actually, how are all you still alive and still have all of your limbs? What the fuck? But it's really stupid, but that's just how it feels. It's so unsatisfying watching other people, random side characters, die when the main characters are still safe and protected by the plot blanket. It doesn't work. At that point, there's no point in killing anyone, really. Except maybe the villain, but even then, eh. Also, even if you kill, just to add, to really hammer this point home, even if you do kill off one of your main characters, if it doesn't satisfy, advancing the plot, or motivating anything, or even just kind of feeling any kind of arc, if they just die to die, it's still bad. Because at that point, the readers are going to see through it and just realize you just killed them off because you killed them off. It's not satisfying, and it doesn't make your world more realistic, it just looks bad. So now that we've discussed when to kill off a character, let's talk about when you should not kill a character, because that's just as important. And the first one probably isn't surprising, but if you're only killing off a character to shock your readers, it's just shock value, we see through it, it doesn't work, please don't. Make it have a point. In that same vein, if it's just to make the readers sad, we're not sad. We don't care. It's not going to work. So please don't do that. So another time when you should not kill off a character is to remove a pointless character. Because in my opinion, if the character's pointless, they shouldn't exist. Either you have to cut them from the book entirely, or you have to give them a point. Something. Even if they're like, well guys, I did the one thing I have to and not to travel for another thing that'll come back in later. Or, again, you just give them a stronger point. Because at that point, their death is so unsatisfying and I hate it. The next thing is that, please, don't just kill off only gay and trans characters. We see what you're doing. We don't like it. It drives me up the wall, actually. And, to follow that up, please don't kill off women just to further the male's protagonist. We see that everywhere, where it's like, oh, my wife died and now I must go on this quest. Don't put your wife in the refrigerator or the freezer, however that saying goes. Let them be, let them live. They can help the plot in a different way other than just dying. Now that you know when and when not to kill off a character, let's talk about some ways to make that death more impactful. And the first one is, in my mind, a little obvious because they should have this anyways, but regardless. Make sure that they have strong relationships with the other characters. If the character that's a loner and never talks dies, I'm not going to notice they were missing. I don't think the other characters are going to notice they're missing either. So make sure that they have a strong bond with most, if not all, of the entire group. And just because it's a strong bond doesn't mean it's have a good one. They can be fighting but still have a deep, complex relationship. That doesn't matter. Just make sure it's strong. And the next one is also kind of obvious, but I'm surprised at how many people don't do it. You have to show how the living respond to the death. I've heard this so many times. It's not the death that's sad. It's watching the reaction of the other characters that makes it sad. Like, I'm gonna spoil Endgame. If you have, when Tony Stark dies, yes, his death is sad, but it's watching everyone else react to his death that maybe burst out crying like a baby. Another way that you can make a character's death impactful is to kill them when they're happy. And this is so that way you can add that shock moment should you want to. I personally love this. It's a great mood changer where suddenly, everyone's happy around maybe on a campfire, everyone's telling stories, it's all great. And then, gunshot, dead. And it's like so amazing to see effectively done. And it also adds this bit of tragedy, especially if a character has kind of worked really hard to get to that state of happiness. They were, whatever, depressed or had a lot of tragic moments in their lives and they're finally accepting family or finally accepting happiness and then they drop dead. That's not my personal favorite. I get mad because it's like, why even get them happy at that point? But I do know a lot of other people that really enjoy this. So pick what you feel is best for that moment and for that reason. The next tip is to have the character fight against whatever is killing them, whether it be an illness or poison or a physical enemy. Have them fight against it. That fighting spirit gives us hope, and so when you crush it, it's amazing. Because, I hate to bring it up, but cancer. When you hear a survivor story, it makes you want to cry because you hear how much they had to struggle and how close they were to losing everything. To hear that they succeeded in living, which is amazing, you're like, oh my God, that's so great that you lived. But when you see people die after they fought for so long, it makes it even more tragic. The next tip is to kill them off in the middle of their story. And it could be either the story or their personal story, whichever one. But it is so just tragic to see someone die in the middle of their own story, because we see what could have been. We see what they're where they could have gone, especially if the group continues on whatever path they are. It's like they should have been there. And that loss, especially when masterfully done, can really carry some weight to the book. Another tip that I find essential is that make the character live on after they die. And this can be as like a memory or a ghost or as an idea, maybe even a symbol that, rallies other people to really give it meaning. But I feel like you have to have the character kind of weirdly live on in another way, because when you lose someone, you never stop thinking about them. Whether it be like the character finally graduates from college or high school, that cheesy end moment a lot of young adult novels have, where like, we did it. There was always that bittersweet moment of like, oh, it's been so amazing if they were here to celebrate with me. And for simple, if you really want to go with that, it's that their death maybe sparks the revolution kind of deal, where their death is more symbolic, like this is what we stand for. We have to fight to stop this from happening, and that rallies people. And that can also be very just wonderful to see as well. So the next two I'm going to talk about have to be done extremely carefully, because if not done right, it can seem unsatisfying or even unnecessary. And that is, the first one is that you kill a character in the middle of their arc. This is like they're like in the middle of transitioning, they're in the middle of getting better, and then they're killed, and we see the loss of potential. It's kind of like being killed in the middle of the story. It's the middle of their story more specifically. It's the middle of their growth. They never make it to the end. And if done correctly, it can be super sad. I mean, tears. I wish I had like an example, but nothing's coming to mind. But I'm sure everyone could think of one where it's just like they had so much to go and so much to see and like do, and now they won't, and it's tragic. The second thing that you have to be really careful about is leaving a goal unfinished. Whatever it may be, to get the girl or the guy, to save whatever, to get revenge, whatever goal, to make it home even. If it leaves, unfinished, it can seem tragic. Game of Thrones is very good at tragic stuff, where it's like, all I want is to get home and see my family, and that doesn't happen. They die along the way. It can add a lot of weight to the book. And I mean, again, makes me cry. And I know it really affects others too, because that's just life. Sometimes you don't get to do all your goals, and sometimes you will die along the way, and it can be very impactful. So the last tip that I have for you is self-sacrifice. And this is pretty self-explanatory. Of course, a character or characters will sacrifice themselves to help the group or the main character achieve whatever goal, save the princess, kill the dragon, burn the village down, whatever it is. They have to sacrifice themselves for whatever reason, as maybe they need a sacrifice to move on in the dungeon, I don't know. Or I don't know, I don't really like self-sacrifice, so I don't really keep track of what it's for. Typically it's Disney does it a lot, where it's like, oh, don't worry, I will end my life so that you guys may live further or can do the thing. And typically it's really tragic, especially if characters have gone from a self-serving kind of point of view to a very, empathetic point of view, and they say, no, I will take this burden on. I will sacrifice myself so that you guys can save everyone else. And when done very well, it's, quite a tearjerker, and it's a very beautiful moment. I just really hate self-sacrifice. I fucking hate it. Honestly, I don't like it in movies or reading anything. I won't go into a giant ass rant, but basically I just find it that a lot of times the character just seems too eager to die, where they're like, oh, we need someone to do the thing, I'll do it. And it's like, whoa, do you need therapy? Are you okay? Because damn, chill. You should not be that excited off yourself. Whatever. But essentially, if you're going to do any of the methods that I listed, please be careful. Make sure that you use them with a lot of tact, so that way whatever death and whatever point you want to put across lands. And well, that's all I have for you guys today. Why don't you put down in the comments below which death was your favorite, and please be careful of spoilers. Try to stick to the more known deaths, like Dumbledore or something. I'll hate my life if I just ruined Harry Potter for someone. And also check me out. I'm on Twitter at @writing_addicts, and I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/writingaddicts. And please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. It'll really make my day, and I will see you next time. Bye!